to, make things happen. If I wanted that extra, discount to increase my margins, or if I wanted, my tech people or my tech service providers to actually do something about anything that I was requesting, I had to learn how to be mean.
Right.
Which sucked. And then eventually it became, Carla, Carla, so you answer the phone for Carla, but I was not being authentic to who I normally are. So, yeah.
It's a troubling double standard wherein a woman has to be like firm, direct to the point. They're perceived as being, I'm sorry, a bitch, for lack of better words, or being kind of mean. But would we ever challenge a man who's doing the exact same thing and say that about them? We'd say, no, he's confident, he means business, he gets things done.
And it's funny because I opened the business with my husband, and he would have no problem. Like, they would answer the phones, they would give him the discounts, no problem, they would come in and do all the tech work. And meanwhile, I had to work twice as hard to get it done. Whereas he wasn't even, he was involved in the business, but in the behind the scenes, like the accounting and stuff. But if he was there, like the reps or whoever, they would be looking at him and promoting the products to him. And he's like, don't talk to me, man, talk to her, because she's the boss.
Real boss.
And there would be this surprise, this face of surprise.
And the thing of surprise is you can hit on something important. Is that this idea of unconscious bias is so real. People don't even realize they are biased. And I was at an event just a week ago, and I was wearing I was wearing a loud outfit, a cute blazer in my opinion, but it wasn't your typical corporate blazers that were in the audience. And it was a panel actually talking about the barriers women face. And then right after the panel, I wasn't on the panel, I was just a guest. And as I was walking out, I met this woman. I'm like, so nice to meet you. She says, nice to meet you too. And she goes, are you an event organizer? And she just assumed I was an event organizer because I didn't fit in with everyone else and I was more colorful and loud and whatever. And I know she didn't mean to kind of throw me a little bit, but I was just like, oh man, no, I'm actually a business owner. But it's interesting that her mind went right to that. So I think unconscious bias is a very, very real thing.
Absolutely.
For sure. So you must see so much at Invest Ottawa.
And we also, I think, see the opportunity that we have to work with founders at the very early stage to help them to create those cultures where people can be their authentic self in a really safe environment, where they can create organizations that are diverse from the very beginning. And so, I know that the entrepreneurs I work with know that I will sit on that kind of pillar to kind of express to them, the importance of it. But I would say that a lot of people, I think, recognize it's important. They're still learning how to kind of, what to do to ensure that they can create those organizations. And really that's what our team is there to do, to help them. I also think it's interesting because, even as women, I've often heard other women label themselves as aggressive, and I will be quick to kind of say assertive. Because most men would actually say, I'm a really assertive guy. Most women will actually say, I'm really aggressive.
Right.
And I'm like, actually, you're assertive. And I try to make that very polite kind of correction because I think it's also for us to be able to champion that. I think businesses today recognize the importance of representing the communities of which they serve, or really important businesses, and smart businesses do that. And I think that, the work that I get to do with some of the earlier stage, and I know Karla gets to do as well, that is an incredible opportunity to give them the tools for their toolbox so that they can create those cultures that will scale with them at 50 people, at 100 people. We have some of our organizations that are catching up. They recognize the importance. And you know what? It takes a very strong business leader and founder, especially male founders, to say, you know what? We got to 20 employees. We don't have any diversity on our team, and I want to change that. And I will celebrate. I will high five those founders. I will tell them to be bold and be champions, and that they will create the cultures that they want, that will be legacies, right, for them. And I think that, and that's what people are looking for.
That should be celebrated. Recognizing we made a mistake when we started by just going with people who we knew, people who think like us, people who look like us, and that creates this ripple effect of a serious lack of diversity that can have huge implications on potentially the long-term success of the business, right? We have studies that show time and time again that when you have diversity in businesses, they often drive more revenue, they're more innovative and they're more profitable. So it's not just this like, let's all be nice to each other and gender balance. It's also good for the economy.
And I have conversations with founders all the time that do understand that impact, and the research is out there. So, I think they see that they still need some support in how do I? So, and that's where we can come in with connecting them to different, to the internationally trained and educated community and all the settlement agencies that are there that are representing incredible talent that we can work with. And working when they're looking to expand their boards, connecting them with all the amazing women on board programs that can diversify their board. I will say that what I've seen, and I'm certainly not a venture capitalist expert, but what I have seen kind of on the outside is that more and more firms are looking to invest in organizations that are diverse. They are interested in seeing diverse founders. And even in their own organizations, they recognize the importance of investing in people that represent the community. And so I think we're going to see, in a positive way, and we're already seeing this with some of the bigger firms, the partners are diverse. They are gender diverse, they are diverse in all backgrounds, and I think that that's only going to contribute to more entrepreneurs being able to have those connections to remove some of the barriers that some of our entrepreneurs have faced.
So, sorry, Karla, you're saying?
Yeah, so I have a question for you. So as more companies start realizing or start getting more educated about the need for diversity in their teams, do you foresee, for lack of better words, a lack of supply? Will there be more demand than supply? Like, I know that there's boards that require more women, but are more women actually putting themselves forward to be board members, or are there more women putting themselves forward to be partners and to be, to be at the table?
So the chicken and egg.
Yeah.
Sort of thing,
So do you see a disparity?
I think it's happening at the same time.
Okay,
I think that
cool.
there are. I think one leads to the other. I think if we talk about boards specifically, I think organizations that are recognizing they want more diversity on their boards, even if they're early stage, the reality is a lot of us as entrepreneurs go to the people we trust the most. We're going to go to friends and family members and trusted advisors. At some stage, as you hire and even as you expand your board, you need to go outside. My sort of, personal mission is to try to help folks recognize there are other folks outside their normal, I call it 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon, that they could get amazing thought leadership and expertise outside of that sort of normal network that they have. And there are some incredible organizations out there that exist that are actually there to attract women to put up their hand and to shoulder tap and say, you would be fabulous on this board, and you should, Volunteer Ottawa, as an example, has this amazing introduction to sort of being on a board, tailored more to the nonprofit and NGO world. But I think more and more, the Canadian Board Diversity Council has some great programs, more tailored to the private sector. I think we're going to need to do it almost in parallel. I think we're going to need to continue to champion one another and say, I think you would be awesome, and I think you should put your hat in the ring there. We know for a fact, and the research is out there, that women generally, when they look at a board of director request and or even a job posting, they feel like they need to do about 70% of that to apply. Where generally men will go, I can do about 30%, I'll put my hand, I'll apply. And so I am fortunate to mentor a lot of young women professionals, and I always say, apply. What's the worst that can happen? You get an interview and you demonstrate that you can be a differentiation, you can differentiate yourself in other ways to kind of proceed in that. So I think it's a combination of both, and I think that is going to be a real community effort. One, to demonstrate that the businesses that women entrepreneurs are creating are ones that VCs, venture capitalists, and financial institutions, and all of the other companies that will give loans and grants to are a force to be reckoned with. And then, of course, we're going to also let them know that we want to see diversity in these organizations. So I think it's twofold.
Absolutely, and I think you touched on a really important point that fortunately these things are happening parallel, where we're starting to see more boards get more women and more women kind of like moving upwards to kind of take these opportunities. But it only happens if we have a lot of mentorship and sponsorship in the process. So like you called out, it's important to sponsor and nominate women and say, like, you are good enough, you are worthy, help them break down that confidence barrier. What's the worst that could happen? They say no, well, you move on, and you move on to the next thing, right? And so I think that's like a really good call out. It's a responsibility that we all carry, men, women, everyone. So I think that's a good call out. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. So Rebecca, in case you forgot the question, we're basically just talking about some of the barriers that we face as women entrepreneurs. What would you say are some that you've experienced personally, or you've just noticed observationally?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I'm still in the early stages of rolling out the business, and I'm sure I'll be facing some hurdles. But even before launching, I found myself sort of positioning my pitch a little bit differently depending on who I was talking to, which I didn't like. And you know when you say something and then you catch yourself and you're like, that didn't feel good. It was kind of like that. So there was, before launching and before fully committing myself to the business, I would, let's say I was speaking to a man in business and trying to sort of pitch this idea of women's underwear is a little bit challenging. So I'd find myself talking about it a little bit more casually, or like a lifestyle. I don't know. It wasn't.
This is no big deal.
Yeah, it's just like something I'm trying out, and that didn't sit well with me because I wasn't doing the brand justice, and I wasn't maybe talking about the points that I'm really passionate about. I was talking about the points that I thought would resonate with them, and I have like a sales background, and I'm the type to maybe mold to the person I'm talking to for the sake of the conversation, but really. One thing that I've learned and that I'm working on is, making that pitch consistent and standing by, the values of the business and the things that I've worked so hard to build. That's something that I struggle with. I don't know if others struggle with that, but being in an industry like intimates, people may jump into the conversation with sort of this idea that it's just beautiful lingerie, or it's just, something, where there's one end goal, but really there's so many moving pieces. So for me, that was a bit of a struggle at the start, and I think with time, as I speak with the business more and it grows, I'll stop doing that. And another thing that I do, I feel like I'm just calling myself out. I tend to say we when it's just me. So not doing that anymore and just being like, hey, it's just me. Like, I'm the one driving to these random places in Montreal to meet with the manufacturer. Like, it's just me. So being able to be confident and them trusting only me behind the business is something I'm also working on. But I think really important for us to just be honor what we're doing and who's behind the business.
Absolutely. Very well said. Thank you. So I'm going to just basically wrap up this panel with more of an inspirational note, I suppose. So what is one piece of inspirational advice that has stood out to you, or even just helpful advice that was given to you at some point during your journey, and why has it stuck with you to this day? And we don't have to go in order, whoever can think of it.
Something's come to mind, so maybe I'll jump in.
Yeah, perfect.
I didn't really have a mentor when I started, but anyone in the fashion space or clothing industry, like I was just trying to schedule a coffee with them, and I met with this great woman called Melissa Shavinsky. She's the founder of Raw Pulp and Grind, and she's been in that space, and a great piece of advice she gave me was, you're jumping into this industry, like maybe there isn't a big network for sustainable fashion in Ottawa, but go to where that network is. So invest in yourself, and she was the one who encouraged me to go to that textile conference in New York, and that, like, I was surrounded with women and people building all sorts of different businesses in this space, and it lit that fire for me. So if you are in the early stages of your business and you need to kind of drink the Kool-Aid, put yourself in that environment, and maybe it's investing in a conference or an event or a community that you want to be part of. But for me, that was what really got me so passionate about sustainability and the different opportunities I have with this very simple business. I'm selling underwear, but now there's this whole other mission that kept me excited about the business, and I wouldn't have been able to find that if I didn't put myself there. So it was challenging to justify flying to New York before the business had launched, but that was one of the best investments. So
I think that's so important. That happened to me. I wasn't necessarily on the cusp of burnout, but I was highly questioning, why do I choose this life I live? Why do I have two businesses? Why do I have a job? I am insane compared to, it just, why am I doing all this? And I felt very, defeated. And then I was actually at this ESI trade show that our team went with Tease Tea, and I had to basically, pitch myself over and over and over again as was like the founder of the company and like talk about the brand and all this type of stuff. And when people would light up when they'd see me talk about the brand and how passionate I am about it and, about the quality of like tea that we have and why it would complement, their spa or their hotel or whatever the case is. And that lit that fire for me, that motivation. And I think, again, it goes back to this idea of like over-glamorized entrepreneurship. It's so easy to focus on the window dressing and sometimes it can feel so demotivating at times with the lows. It can be so low and painful, but those moments, whether it's going to a trade show, whether it's showing up in a space where there are people doing the same work as you, trying to figure out the same thing, it just lights you and it fills your cup, and it can be a really good motivator to keep going. So it's a really good point. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So how about
my wisdom is about mentorship. I remember, and it was a bit of a profound moment many years ago, being with one of my mentors. And he actually called me out. I was saying, I'm not ready to mentor other people. And he said to me, everyone has something to give. And why would you create a roadblock for yourself before you even try? And I remember this, and I paid that forward so many times with telling other professionals, mostly women, you too can also give back and pay it forward. You have a journey that you've lived up to this point. Someone else earlier in their journey can benefit from what you've learned, life lessons, right? And those lived experiences. And I think that a lot of times, and maybe a trait as a woman, we tend to put other people first and not necessarily put ourselves first. And I think that, when you become, and it can be informal. I think I've mentored in formal capacities. I do a lot of internal, or I guess informal mentorship. I'll always take time when someone reaches out to me on LinkedIn and asking for some support. 30 minutes of time with someone could be, potentially kind of life-changing, on giving them some confidence that they need. And I think that that's something I think is really important, that pay it forward. So going back to what you and your team are doing, I think it's an incredible opportunity to give back in really an easy way. It's time, yes, and it's lived experiences that we're sharing, but I think everyone in this room, even though you can't see them, I know have lived experiences they can pass on to entrepreneurs that are at a different part in their journey, and I think that's really powerful. And that's where we go back to women need to champion other women and empower one another. We're not in competition. There is no, necessary negativity there. I think we need to, empower one another and continue to do that in a way that does pay it forward. So we carve a path that's easier for women who are going to be, taking the next journey, the same journey that we are.
That's a great point, and I like how an interesting theme that I wasn't expecting today is this idea of the role that we all play in it, regardless of what stage that we are at in our entrepreneurial journey. And even the Founders Fund, I approached someone to be a mentor who opened an incredible coffee shop in Canada in the middle of nowhere, and I'm so mind blown how beautiful it is and how successful it is. And I said, can you be a mentor? She said, I just opened less than a year ago. I am not going to be a mentor. I don't know anything. I'm like, there are a lot of people who have never signed a commercial lease in their life. There are a lot of people who have never had to figure out how many baked goods versus how do you negotiate contracts with your vendors and suppliers. You know more than you think and more than you give yourself credit for. You might only be in year one, but you know so much. Don't undersell yourself. And fortunately, I was able to sell her on being a mentor. Yes. So I'm really excited about that. But that was an unexpected barrier that I experienced in trying to find mentors. That example came up way more frequently than I anticipated. And so I think that's a really good call that you shared.
And I just want to say really quickly, it doesn't have to be a formal mentorship relationship. It can be literally a 15 or 20 minute call that can really make an impact. And I think that can be really sometimes more powerful, right? Even if you just take the time to engage with someone. And it's amazing that you were able to champion that person and give them that boost of confidence. Hopefully they pay that forward.
Yeah, exactly. It creates a ripple effect. Oh, I just love how this theme is all coming together. It's so good. Amazing. So what has been some advice for you that stuck with you?
There's actually a saying with all of this that I love, and I actually have it in everywhere I can. I have it in a postcard, and I just give it out to people. And it's, when you become a leader, success is all about growing others. And it's I read that, I was like, yes, this is exactly it, the giving back. But in terms of an advice that I would give aside from that, super cool, I remember when I was back in the days after I did journalism in school, believe it or not, and then I went into the dark side of public relations.
What's the dark side?
It's public relations.
Okay, just public relations in general.
Just
Okay.
PR, yeah, there's a thing between journalists and PR people,
Got it,
so I went
okay.
into the PR
Got
side,
it, okay.
and I,
So you east side versus west side?
yeah, pretty much. And I was loving it, and I was fast tracking my career, and I really enjoyed it. But I was a daughter of entrepreneurs, right? And then I was talking to my parents one day in my office, and I'm like, all I want to do is open up a pet store. And then there was silence on the line, right? And I'm like, whoa. Well, my parents are on the phone, and I'm like, what's going on? And my dad's like, so why don't you?
I love that.
And I was like, and it just hit me, right? Like it just hit me like a pound of bricks, because it's like, here is, mom and dad who busted their butts to like leave everything behind when they were in their late 40s and start all over again here, and they had already opened their business back by when we were having this conversation, and it was just so like, it was just an act of humility for myself. It's like, what am I doing just telling my parents that, I went to university here, I had a nice job, and all I want is to open up a business. What are my limitations? What is limiting me? And it took my dad just to say, so why don't you? And I was like, yeah.
I love that.
So why don't you?
That's a beautiful way to conclude this panel, I think. So if there's anybody who's watching or anybody here right now who's thinking, I want to do this thing, just ask yourself, why don't you? I love that.
What's
That's
stopping you?
incredible. Yes. Thank you so much for being on this panel today in celebration of International Women's Day / week / it's turning into a month, which is really exciting.
Keep it going.
Yes, just keep it going. It's great. And for those who are watching, this is really exciting. We are opening up Founders Fund memberships for 1 week only. So if you're not already a member, or if you know someone who could benefit from becoming a member after hearing a little bit of what you've just learned today, please visit us at foundersfund.ca, and we'll have a special promo code as well that we'll share with you. Just check out the copy in this post. Take care.